my God, guys! I just finished watching TNA Slammiversary, and AJ Styles made his return to TNA for the first time in 11 years. Star-studded show, by the way. Still a little bit crazy to me that the NXT stars are holding all, both world championships now, the Knockouts and the TNA World Championship. That's crazy. Did not expect the main event to go the way it went. I was fully thinking that Santana was going to win in his hometown of Long Island, New York, win in New York, but that was not to be. So I am going to kind of touch on that, but I mainly wanted to focus on the fact that, at least on one of the biggest moments of the night, really, outside of the title changes that happened, was the return of AJ Styles. And it happened right after Leon Slater had an excellent match with Moose. Just what you expect between power and speed with these guys. I mean, Moose was throwing out his big moves. Slater kicked out of the spear. Moose kicked out of the first. When Slater hit him with his finisher, the first time he kicked out of that. It was just everything you could expect. Slater even countered a power bomb Moose was going to hit on him with a Hurricane Rana twice outside of the ring, which Moose looked like he really took that bump hard, almost like he got hurt with the bump he took him outside of the ring. Because I think Moose, he caught Slater with a spear from midair, but Slater rolled out of the ring. So they just had a really excellent match. And Slater, managed to win and become the youngest X Division champion, passing and beating Amazing Red's record, which he did pay homage to Amazing Red because he hit him with the Code Red outside of the ring to win the X Division championship. And sure enough, it was the perfect time for AJ Styles to come out and talk to congratulate Leon Slater, and just to talk about you know the momentum he had. Talked about some of the past guys who set the bar in the X Division, saying how the X Division was all about not was about no limits. And he mentioned guys like Samoa Joe, Christopher Daniels, for he was there as some of the ones who were there when he was there, and really just put Leon over. Some people was thinking that maybe this was AJ coming to set something up with TNA, but at this point, I don't know. I don't know if AJ will ever actually wrestle in TNA again. Perhaps I could just see him looking forward to an induction with TNA in the Hall of Fame. But I don't know if he'll wrestle there, just because it seems to be that they've mainly been having the NXT stars wrestle in TNA as opposed to like the guys from the main roster, or even the women for that matter. So I don't really see him wrestling with TNA again. It's possible, before he hangs it up, he could do it one more time, but because the fans were chanting, one more match, or have a match, but he didn't tease anything about having a match. He just strictly came out there to put Leon over. But the best part about the whole thing was that AJ Styles came out with his old TNA song. And I'm glad he did, because it would have been a disconnect to come out with his WWE theme, They Don't Want None. That's a good theme in my opinion, but, his TNA theme, he had that theme for a long time when he was in TNA. And, that would have connected. That connected as soon as they played it. Mind you, they haven't heard this song in years. And the crowd just erupted after Leon was holding the belt, and they started saying, you are, I am. Everybody just said, I am. And even I was saying it because, I didn't follow TNA growing up, but I have been. I watched it somewhat, but I didn't really get to see it as much back then. But I've known who AJ Styles was for some time, even before he came to WWE, and I am familiar with his old things. I've been looking more at some old, TNA stuff, and it was just a really amazing moment. It was a big moment, for Styles to come back after being gone for so long. And who knows if this would even been possible a few years ago before WWE had a working relationship with TNA. And AJ did appear at the 20th anniversary of TNA Slammiversary 2022. He did make a cameo at that Slammiversary, but this was the first time he was actually in the ring in front of the crowd since 2014. But he did appear at 2022. He did make a cameo at that Slammiversary, which was a big moment. But for him to come out with his old TNA song, which, by the way, one reason why I was so happy about it was because in an interview he had with Chris Van Vliet, like, he literally said, like, he never wanted to hear that song again. Like, he wasn't, because of how long, he had that song, he wasn't, like, he just didn't want to hear it again. And so for him to come out with that song again, like, it was something, for him to come back out with that theme song, because for so long, because the TNA fans, I'm sure they've, been itching for him to come back out with that song, because obviously he couldn't do it in WWE because, I think TNA has the rights to it, but either way, it just represented who he was, the face of TNA, one of the guys in X Division, a multi-time NWA TNA world champion, and so it was just good him putting over Leon Slater and then coming out the ring. That was a phenomenal moment, just absolutely amazing. You had Bully Ray come out after the Hardy Boys won the TNA World Championship. I'm not even sure of what reign this is with them as the TNA Tag Team Champions at this point, because they've won it several times. But it was a really insane match. A lot of bumps with the ladder between them and the Rascals and the Nemeths um, and and oh man, I can't even think of a group right now. But yeah, but like AJ Francis, his first class. So it was, and I will say AJ, that moonsault he hit from the top of the ladder was pretty good. For him, especially with them calling him Flop Dollar and stuff in WWE, he was like screwing up some of his stuff. Like that moonsault he hit from the top ladder was pretty cool. But Jeff Hardy hitting the squad times when both him and his partner on the ladder twice was crazy. The switch to face they hit on the Nemesis with the chairs was crazy. I mean, it was all types of stuff going on in that match. And afterwards, Bully Ray came out and basically talked about how it had been 25 years since they had that Rumble match in 2000, and he wants to do one more match with the Hardys at Bound for Glory, which fortunately I don't think it'll be anywhere near what it was when you consider Devon's condition and Bubba's, or Bully in this case. But I mean, at least it'll just be one last time that they do it. So that should be interesting, because they definitely are, just one half of the teams that really made the map during the Attitude Era between them and Edge and Christian. But of course, they're in AEW, so they're not going to be involved in it. But it's definitely, going to be interesting how that plays out. But yeah, that was a big moment as well. And then you also had, JC Jane actually beat Masha Slamming, which I had a feeling would happen, especially because Masha had beaten her clean in the tag match NXT, and the fact that they said that she had beaten her before, I just had a feeling JC was going to win it. And shenanigans aside, because Fatal Influence were taken out when Zaya Brookside and Lee came to save them, to get them out of there. But even after that, JC Jane managed to beat Masha Slamovich, and now she owns both championships. So that is going to be interesting. You know, I hope this doesn't mean that they get rid of the knockouts. I hope they still keep both belts. And it just be more of a thing where she just goes back and forth to both shows. Because a lot of times when they unify titles, often they end up retiring one of the titles. But in this case, I just hope it's a case of them unifying them, but still have it where both titles get defended. Or at the very least, eventually, you know, she drops one of the titles. And I do think it will happen, but based on how this show ended, I feel like this is going to drag out to Bound for Glory is what I'm thinking. Because Bound for Glory is the biggest show of the year. And I'm like, if you're not going to do it now, the Slammiversary is like TNA's version of SummerSlam, basically. And so if you're not going to do it now, I feel like they're just going to drag it out to Bound for Glory. So that's what seems like it's going to happen there. You had the System beating Dark State, which was the only win the TNA had against NXT when the titles were not on the line, along with Matt Cardona. And so the System were actually acting as faces. So between that and then, you know, Moose putting the title around Leon Slater's waist, I start to wonder, does this signal a face turn for this group, or, you know, they're tweeners now? I don't know, because they were definitely, I figured that they were just acting like faces because they were going against NXT. But the fact that even Moose was acting that way after losing to Slater, and he hasn't been a face in a long time. Like, he's been a heel for like at least the last 5 or 6 years, he's been a heel. It's been a long time since he's been a face, so that was interesting. But yeah, you had that happen. You also had the opener with Mustafa Ali and Cedric, which is a really good opener, really amazing opener. Mustafa finally got his win back on Cedric, you know, which was interesting how it happened, because he hit the Lombard check on Tasha Steelz, and immediately, you know, Mustafa hit him with the 450 to win it. So that was interesting. But it was an excellent match, though. To open the show up. And he even had the Eddie Hartwell beating, which it took a while for that to really get going, but I think the finishing stretch, the last couple of minutes was good. Her and, you know, her match with Tessa Blanchard. I didn't think it was, it was probably outside of the Dark State ones. I think that match was kind of weak at some points too. I think this match, it definitely took a while to get going, but I think like the last couple of minutes of it was, you know, it really started to pick up. But between her working on the knee for a while and just some of the selling and all of that, it took a while to really get going. But I think, like, you know, as the match progressed, it got somewhat better than what it was. But I would have to say between that match and the match with Dark State was probably like the weaker ones. But you know, the one with Masha and JC Jane was pretty solid outside of, you know, the shenanigans, the record, taking down all that stuff. But yeah, you know, that was the show in a nutshell. And Trick Williams retained his belt after it seemed like he was injured, but it was a phone in, which, yeah, I could tell was set up just because he was standing on the apron outside. And then he came back in the ring to steal the win from Santana, who I really thought was going to win. I really thought Santana was going to get his moment. But, you know, I think now they're just going to drag this out to Battle for Glory. But I mainly just wanted to talk about AJ Styles, like I said, and then briefly touch on some of the other stuff. But it was a really good show. They said that attendance was like 7,200 or something. I think 263, something like that. One of their largest attendance in quite a while. So that was a huge thing for TNA. Just an amazing show all around. So yeah, That's just what I mean when I talk about guys. So, yeah. So, sorry, it's a flex. I'm just straight out to